Welcome and good afternoon, everyone. A very warm welcome to today's session. We're delighted to have you with us. I'm Alison Vorster from Connect-Biz, and together with my business partner, Vanessa Schonborn, we're thrilled to be hosting this webinar today in collaboration with CohesionX. For those of you who may not know Connect-Biz, Vanessa and I have been in the ICT and telco industry for many, many years. And earlier this year, we were given a fantastic opportunity to start something new, drawing on our expertise. And what we decided to do was to form a company where we engage and work with organizations as a strategic growth partner and help enable them both from a business development function perspective and through their technology environments, mainly through strategic partnerships like we have with CohesionX. Our technology focus is predominantly on enabling digitization from the edge and just ensuring that we enable the frontline business and it's connected, integrated, and supported by synergistic technologies. So today's webinar, we're going to be exploring the intelligence as a fabric and how it's reshaping the way organizations connect data, systems, and people, and just how AI is evolving in today's world from a concept into practical driver of efficiency, insights, and growth. Just before we get into the crux of the session, just a little bit of housekeeping. At the top of your Teams viewer, there's a Q&A button. Please, throughout the session, if you've got any questions, just please pop your questions into that. At the end of the session, Vanessa will be running a Q&A. We'll be having two parts to the Q&A. The first one will be through our to have a Q&A with our guest speaker, Francois Rossouw. And then we will get to the Q&A section from the audience. With that, let me hand over to Francois, who is our guest today, to introduce himself, followed by Andre, who will introduce himself and take us all straight into the webinar and the technology stack. So, Francois, over to you.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Francois Rossouw. I'm the CEO of the Southern Africa Agricultural Initiative, or SAI. We're an organization that represents about 14,000 family farmers in the primary production sector here in Southern Africa.
Thank you, Alison. I'm Andre Strauss. And just to correct some of the facts, Alison, I don't know how we can say so many years in technology because you don't look a day older than 31, so it can't be that long. Anyway, I'm Andre Strauss. I'm the CEO and co-founder of CohesionX. We're a South African AI company, and I'll be taking you through a combination of our experience, our views on how to implement generative AI in enterprise, as well as combining that with some of the market-leading research on the topic. So I am going to kick off, Alison, if that's good. Okay, great. So the talk is called the Intelligence as a Fabric, and the principle of that is that we want to implement AI projects on the basis that it becomes part of day-to-day workflows, and it's not necessarily seen as AI initiatives. Now, just as we get started, why I believe we have a view on this topic and why we can advise our partners and our customers and businesses on this topic is we've been doing this for a couple of years now. We exclusively focus on AI, and specifically in the field of AI, we focus on generative AI, which is essentially leveraging the large language models and the typical ChatGPT type of technologies, specifically pointed at business and to make it safe for them. And if we just took an extract of our September statistics, we have more than 164. It's actually closer to 200 now. Projects live in production across some of the premier brands in South Africa, like the likes of Woolworths, PwC, Mustec, Alpha Farm Group, and many large businesses in South Africa. Our platform generated about 21 billion tokens in September. A token is basically like either a sentence or a phrase. So that's quite a lot of generation. And that's production. So when we talk about these projects, we're not talking about demos or proof of concepts or trials. We're talking about production use cases live in production used by customers daily. We processed about 1.7 million requests in September from a user pool of just over 160,000 users. We've seen at scale Gen AI being deployed in South African enterprise. These are all South African projects. So we believe that South Africa is actually a little bit ahead of the curve. Now, you will hear about very dooming statistics about the failure rate of AI. Specifically, there was a study released by MIT about a month ago doing research on US-based AI projects. And what they found is that more than 90% of such projects were actually discontinued or failed to deliver any real value to business. What that shows us, and also what we saw in the stats, is that most enterprises in the US did experiment or did try POCs, but very few of them actually ended up delivering value or shipping value. And some of the reasons we see why this happened was it's very easy to make a AI project look good if it's an isolated tool. So you get some cool, funky tool like Nano Banana, and you can generate an image, and it looks really cool, and everybody's jaws drop and say, "Oh, cool, that's amazing." But if you focus on that tool and it's not integrated into the enterprise ecosystem, it really struggles to move from that cool demo into something production-wide. And what we see is that there were a lot of these point-to-point applications or individual demos or standalone deployments or projects being done. But what was lacking was something that could really embed it and entrench it in the business. So you needed a platform, or businesses needed platforms in order to make sure that those cool individual use cases becomes part of the entire workflow in the organization. What often happened, and especially last year, I think less so this year, especially last year in the US, it was all about, we want AI, let's do AI. We don't know why, but let's just do it because it's a cool technology. And that approach, in my career, I'm also just over 30 like Alison. In my illustrious career, I've never seen technology projects succeed if it's about the technology. It has to be about a business problem that you solve. And I think, again, with that hype cycle last year, a lot of businesses said, let's just do some AI for the sake of AI. And they could demo something really funky and the thing would answer and everybody was happy. But I mean, it doesn't have substance. And then also what happened was the adoption of Gen AI for consumers is drastic. There's close to 2 billion people on the planet now using it daily. I mean, that is just scary stats. Most enterprises, most businesses that you work for will have up to like 90% of the employees use some sort of a free AI tool. And it creates what's called the Gen AI divide, where your users and your employees are pushing technology and tools, and it pressures the business into adopting something it's not ready for, and then the company doesn't even have an AI strategy. So those were some of the factors why we saw such a big failure rate. And the problem is a lot of value unfortunately got replaced and got missed by some of these aspects. So the first thing is called shadow AI, and it's essentially your employees desperate to have access to AI tools to do simple, mundane tasks like translating emails or rewriting emails or summarizing documents. And because most companies in South Africa up until recently did not provide a company-sanctioned safe tool, people were using their own devices. Alison and I dealt with some of the largest telcos, and you would walk into an exco meeting and everybody's got 2 laptops. It's got the company laptop that's so restricted you can't do anything. And then they've got their private laptop where all their shadow AI and IT programs lies. That's a huge risk because if you're not on a paid account from one of these AI providers, typically your data is not private, the stuff is shared. You're probably breaking 3 or 4 different POPI rules and regulations. So a lot of value got destroyed by employees using unsanctioned, unintegrated tools standalone. Also, what happened was because businesses typically did not govern this at a board level, you would have the same tools doing almost the same stuff being used by different departments. It's called tool sprawl, and you would actually pay then for many different apps that does the same thing because it's not integrated, and that a lot of value got lost there. Pilots was a really big issue because, like I said, and I'm in this industry, it really is easy to do a really sexy demo, but I mean the value goes nowhere if you are not able to deploy it into production where the entire organization can get the value. And then there's just a lot of the guardrails. So when I talk about guardrails, and I'll speak a little bit about it later, is in order for enterprise to take advantage of these wonderful language models and all the AI technology that we call foundational AI, which Google is developing and Microsoft and OpenAI, in order to use that technology safely in a business, you have to have guardrails. In other words, you have to have tools to check that the quality of answers are good. You have to have tools to make sure that there's no harmful content. You have to have tools to ensure that the data isn't accidentally leaked onto the internet, those kind of things. There was, if you do not have an architecture for your business and a centralized approach and governance framework, what does happen is you end up doing the same stuff over and over again. You build the same evaluation sets, you build the same tool sets to try and create auditability and those kind of things. And that's quite dangerous because what happens in bigger organizations, you just keep on wasting money on the same stuff, where it's actually much more effective to control it centrally. The last thing that came out in most of the research is what's called novice traps. Experienced technologists, experienced developers, experienced business people and solution architects and quality engineers and minds have a method of solving problems. What happened was with AI in the US, because the tools were so easy to understand, very junior people would create workarounds, which is called novice traps, where they would create a workaround. Instead of fixing the entire solution, they would create a quick fix using AI that skips all the governance steps. And I think now that the technology is maturing, we know that you have to have your seniors in the business design the process that it still makes sense, and then you use AI tools to support it. So those were just some of the areas that we found the value leaks for enterprise. Now, the good news is if you apply Gen AI correctly for what it's good at, it is almost guaranteed to deliver productivity value and efficiency value. So this is an aggregate research article that looks at the entire US market and global market. And what it found was, with all of the thousands of projects reviewed, if you use Gen AI for the stuff that it can actually do, and that's what we call the safe zone, and basically within the boundary, and that's stuff that that is repetitive of nature. So think of an assistant or a team that processes thousands of invoices, and they've got 3 or 4 or 5 people having to manually check the invoices and capturing that into a system. That's a beautiful use case for Gen AI. Also, if you look at things where there's lots of repetitive workflows that's well defined, Gen AI is really good at that. Generating content, documents, reports, audit findings, those are really good if you want to recognize patterns. So there's some types of use cases where language models are absolutely brilliant with, and when you typically apply a project in that space, you will almost certainly see a benefit. 40% is really conservative. We've seen departments being able to go from where 10 people would sit and do mundane tasks, you can now apply 3 to that same task and redeploy 7 to other more intelligent workflows. So one of the key aspects to consider is to pick the right use cases, because there's many things you can address with AI. When you start looking at stuff like novel problem solving or things that just need human intuition in terms of the experience in the industry, stuff that's not well written, if you want to do one soft task that a human creativity can do better, or where it's not repetitive, you typically see a drop in productivity, and that's the problem. So and we've seen that with senior software developers. They produce better code, and it actually, if you have AI assisted tools for them, their productivity drops. We've seen it over and over. We've tested it. That's why we don't use AI to do core development. But if you use AI to do prototypes, quick development, those kind of things, it's really effective. So one of the key aspects is to really consider what kind of use cases you want to deploy. What we've seen with AI is a little bit different to normal traditional technology, in that, number one, I personally believe that AI should sit, or AI governance at least, should be owned by the board, not just the CIO, purely because of the transformative impact it will have on businesses, along with the fact that it can really drive growth, and it has a material risk. And differently to other technologies, AI will eventually be used by every single department in every single business. It's not like it's only applicable to the technology team or the finance team. So for that reason, you need a bit of a broader oversight. And typically, I'm not a governance guy, and I've always been pretty against over-governing these kind of things, but our research and our experience tells us that for a business or a group or an enterprise to have a pre-approved platform architecture saves a lot of time. You can build your evals once. You can make sure that you build all of your guardrails and your protections and your auditing once, and then every team gets their own use cases. There's just a material saving in terms of the overall deployment, especially if you consider that this is a multi-year roadmap of AI development. And then there's practical things like having a pre-approved model catalog where you've got someone, a provider or a team that looks at what's the best, latest models. There's so much happening in the space of R&D that you want to be agnostic of those kind of things. And there's just a lot of benefit to centralizing some of the governance in terms of AI. Now, the foundation for successful AI is some of the things needs to be completely invisible. That's again when we say intelligence as a fabric, we mean it has to be weaved into almost every process in your business. It needs to be almost invisible. Think of a process where a finance team would do a vendor application. They would receive a bunch of files. Someone would open the files and look for the VAT numbers and for the financial stuff and type it into a different system to evaluate. When I talk about AI as being invisible, there needs to be something that the user uploads that zip file, and 2 minutes later, it's pre-populated. There's an assessment, and the user must say, wow, that was amazing. You don't have to label it as AI. It's just behind the scenes. It's part of that workflow fabric. And you suddenly take a process that could take a week down to a day, and the users enjoy it. They're more productive. They're happier. So when we talk about some of these things have to be almost invisible to the users. Things like AI is different to other technology. There's this concept that when you ask ChatGPT, what is the color of the leaves of an oak tree, and it gives you an answer, mostly it's probably going to be right, but you don't know where it comes from. So you need that traceability in the business system, but it needs to be invisible to the users. But in the back end, there has to be something that says, okay, but how did I get this answer? What was the source of the document? How did I use it? How did I translate it? So traceability is really important, and observability of the trust of your system. Then there's the concept is called in AI TRISM, trust, risk, and security management. Today, a lot of enterprises don't have this in place. It would be unthinkable that a year from now, any enterprise has a Gen AI project without this. You cannot do it without this because it puts the whole business at risk. And what this TRISM platform does is, number one, it makes sure that if you want to deploy new use cases, it's super deployable, it's easy. You have to have guardrails in place. These language models are inherently unsafe. It might give you really malicious advice in terms of health if you ask the wrong question. It might give you criminal advice. It might give you discriminatory advice. So you have to have the content guardrails, the security guardrails to protect your users and the integrity of the system. You have to make sure that the data is secure. When someone uploads a payslip or a financial statement, that cannot accidentally be leaked. So all of those foundational things have to be built in the platform base, and every business have to deploy this base before they start doing the project work. And it's not so exciting, this stuff, but this is going to be absolutely essential for any project to work. So that's the first phase of deployment. Like I said, we must start with understanding the use cases that's successful. We then make sure that we've got a centrally managed architecture and risk. Then we deploy the base of your architecture, which is the TRISM layer that handles the security to make sure that the company is protected against the bad stuff in AI, and to make it then ethical and make it responsible. And then we get to the exciting part. So once you've done this, and I believe that no enterprise should do AI without these things that I've discussed up until now in place. The moment that's in place, now it becomes exciting. And our approach, and this is what today is about, was to not go build products that we believe people wanted. What we did is we started with solutions for customers and then productize that. And that's what we recommend in an enterprise. There are hundreds of novel ideas that you can use to implement AI in a business. I would recommend that you take a similar approach to what we have, where we say, let's pick a specific problem to solve and then match the solution. So don't start with the technology, start with the problem. The problem is, let's say you're an oil and gas company or an automotive company, and your onboarding process for a new vendor or customer takes 2 weeks. That seems like a really good problem to solve. Then we say, okay, which of the steps in there can we solve using AI? Reading documents, extracting material out of documents, or writing some of the stuff, or analyzing the material. And then you build the solution, and then you productize it. In our case, we productize it for all of our customers. But in the enterprise, you almost productize it, give it to an owner, and you do the next one. So having this solution-first approach, where you say, ignore the word AI, solve the problem using AI. The user doesn't need to know that. Do it really well, give it to a champion to own, do the next one. That sort of approach works extremely well. And then what has to happen is, when someone talks about it, say, we used to take 2 weeks for onboarding, it now takes 2 days. That should be the message, not we used AI to solve onboarding. It needs to be about the solution. Then I think we got it. Or they must just say, listen, this workflow is amazing. It just works up. Look here, put it in. The outcome is always accurate. It's smarter, quicker, faster. If we approach it like that, by solving problems that way, and we make it almost invisible, we have found that you get a 95% plus success rate, not a 95% failure rate. So that's sort of like our approach, and it works extremely well. We've done this, like I said, almost 200 times already in South Africa with South African businesses. That works. Now, I was thinking we'll show you 1 or 2 of these kind of products that then got birthed out of something that we solved for a customer that we now repeat. The first thing is called Iris. Iris is not a chatbot. Iris is a tool that's AI powered, that looks at documents or images, and it could extract it extract information out of it. So we use this from anything like extracting out of financial reports, financial ratios, or out of images, dents and scratches on a car, or any kind of input where you almost tell it in natural language, I need to know what is the ID number of the directors. And you upload a zip file into the system or in the workflow, and it would extract that. It is super powerful for repetitive tasks. So I'm going to show an example, the customer here, and we've got, I think we have about 60 irises running. Here's a specific example. One of our customers is a major second-hand car retailer, one of the famous ones in South Africa, and they buy thousands of cars. And we use Iris for many of those processes. One of them is we would take a something like a license disk. It would be uploaded, and we would extract out of that all of the material. So I'm going to play a quick video of what that looks like live. This is automated in real life, but for this demo, we just show we will upload a photograph of the license disk, and then Iris would task is to go process that and extract for us different fields out of that. We do the same thing for the photos of the cars, where we compare it to the license disc, making sure it's the right color, identifying dents and scratches. Think of a retailer that delivers your groceries. When they want to onboard a new a driver, you can check whether the guy's got a helmet on and whether the signage is on there, or financial results or invoices, those kind of things. So there we say it's a Suzuki hatchback, and we've got, there we go, there's a VIN number, we've got the name and the description, all of that extracted. Simple use case, but this is actually the kind of stuff that actually works in real life, because instead of someone having to check that, you have an AI do that, and it saves a ton of time. That's a super practical example. We use this, like I said, for invoice extraction, for financial analysis, for image recognition. And the way you configure it is absolutely beautiful. You tell it in natural language. I want to get the VIN number, the car model, the make, the color, and this, go find it for me. So that's one sort of solution that we initially built for a specific customer, and that's repeated. The next one is actually very simple. We call it Conversation IQ. We have customers uploading their PABX audio files into the system. We would then transcribe the entire audio, and we would identify how many speakers are on there. But then, very importantly, what we do is we go say, okay, did the salesperson ask the right questions? Or if it's a support agent, did they ask the right, or did they address the customer right? Did they resolve the issue? We analyze the whole call, and then we provide like a structured thing which you can then almost in real time send back to the salesman or the call center agent saying, next time remember to ask for this, or remember to upsell this, number one. And secondly, you can then look at analytics of that across all of your call center agents. Super practical example. So again, how this would work is there's a data center call center. We would upload a file, and then the system would analyze that. They're going to give us a report. The report is there's no hate speech or any explicit material. The customer of the agent did have a professional greeting, but the agent did not identify himself and his name. You can look at the whole conversation, and that now triggers a workflow to either do additional training. You can look at whether the conversation maybe perhaps started negatively, but the agent solved it positively in the end. You can do a lot of really cool analysis on voice in this instance. This is used by many of our different customers. Again, like I say, this call center agent doesn't even know this. They just get feedback to say, this is how you can improve. These are the things you should ask next time. And then you can also start doing analytics across it. So again, that's a super practical product. There's another product example here where some of our customers want their websites or their ERP systems to have a natural language input. We call this synaptic search. So essentially what you do in synaptic search is you can speak in any of the South African languages. You can mix languages. And what it will do is it will go find data in a database or in an ERP system, that kind of thing. Again, a very practical solution. What we do is the technology is quite complex, but the solution is super simple. So if I were to go in and show you what that looks like, this is incidentally for Wheelie. You can go onto their website. This is live. You can go test yourself, and then you can say, I'm looking for a lekker white bakkie for the plaas. So mixing different languages. I can say it must be under 500,000 Rand. Or 500K, so it's slang. You click search, and then within 10 seconds, it's going to go from a live database, find it. There we go. So there's a bunch of cars that matches that. So again, very practical solution. The AI is almost invisible. People will over time just start using all systems like this, because it's easier to navigate through all the different cars. And that's the way you would buy a car. You walk into a dealership, you're not going to say Suzuki Swift. You're going to say, I need a small car for my student daughter. This is my budget, and I want it to be safe, and it must be DEKRA certified. That's how you speak to a salesman. I believe that all systems in future will be like this. You're going to speak to all of your ERP systems and your financial systems in a way that you can express yourself in natural language, and you just get the answers. So those are just 3 examples of how we take a customer problem, solve it, and then move it into sort of like a product solution. If it's always about the solution for the problem, you're typically in the safe zone. If you say, well, let's figure out what to do with AI, I think you are in the danger zone. So that's essentially what we say about that. And the idea would be to find the problem, find the champion, solve the problem, productize it, make sure it's in production before you do the next one. And you must typically try and do it within 90 days. Then you will move into a 95% success rate versus a 5% success rate. The next thing I want to just note in terms of South Africa and our research in South Africa is that there's a major disconnect between the adoption. So you got like this 80% plus, in some companies, 95% adoption of free AI tools by employees, but only 13% of companies have a governance framework. That's a major risk, and I would advise immediately addressing it. We also believe that we've moved past the point now where sexy demos and funky POCs are going to be worth it. I think that every AI project should have a return on investment angle. So once we identify what the problem is, we need to quantify what the benefit could be, either cost reduction or an increase in quality or an increase in revenue. But you have to find something that's got enough value to connect your strategy to, so that you can go to your CFO and say, here's my ROI plan. I'm going to implement this. This is my cost associated with the project, but I will see the following benefit, and we can measure it. That's how other projects are done, and I believe that AI should be no different to that. What we also say, and I think I said it in the beginning, I truly believe that the management of AI and the governance of AI must become a board function and not just a CTO function. I think the execution lies with the CIO, but the board should manage that. And I think that in South Africa, there's quite a lot of debate in the US at the moment about job losses due to AI. I think it's completely inflated. And South Africa is an extremely different market to the US. I think personally in South Africa, there's almost just benefit to employees, because what we do is we do an augmentation first approach. Whatever AI we select is to empower the users, to have them have this co-pilot of AI to make them more productive, make them more efficient, and reduce the mistakes. If we do it like that, we're protecting our employees, we're protecting the businesses so that we're more profitable, and that we then protect the jobs in return. Also, we have to consider that South Africa has many official languages, so the models we select has to be multilingual. And I think that typically South Africans are pretty good at this. We've seen amazing success in deploying AI because we got quite a practical approach to these kind of things. So that's just some views on the South African market. Our blueprint for deploying Gen AI, this seems extremely aggressive. If you stick to this, you will most likely be successful. And that's what we say is month one, it shouldn't be a 6-month process. You have to deploy that TRISM, that security, that risk management, the guardrails, the evals, the model selection. The first 30 days is to deploy the TRISM platform and connect your data sources, your SharePoint and your ERP systems and your knowledge bases and Dropbox and whatever gets connected in the first 30 days. Then you have to keep yourself accountable as the owners of these projects to say, I need to have something of substance live for at least one audience. In other words, I want a human resources assistant, or I want a support assistant live by 60 days that is actually used by a department. And typically, our advice would be, don't try and automate the whole procurement process. Pick one process, maybe in procurement, vendor selection or RFP analysis. Pick one function inside procurement and do it really well. Get a champion to own it, test it, evaluate it, track the metrics, and deploy that, make it live. Make sure they use it every day and it's embedded. Then you move on to the next one and the next one. And then between day 60 and 90, you make sure that that function that you developed as a first project is integrated. In other words, it's not a standalone tool where someone has to go do stuff. It's part of your workflow. It just becomes invisible, like we said, it's part of the fabric. If you do it like this, by 90 days, you know if it's worked, you can do the next ones. If it hasn't worked, you kill that project, you do another one, but you measure it the whole time. If you take this sort of a practical approach, I know it's very aggressive for enterprise, but at the pace at which AI is moving at the moment, this is sort of what you need to do in order to make it real, accountable, make everybody responsible for what they must do, and then make sure it gets into production. Following this 90-day rule almost guarantees success in terms of deployment. So that's sort of like our approach that we would recommend. This has been tried and tested. Like I said, we've got more than 50 enterprise customers using Gen AI in production. So we've this method was developed by us, but it's also supported by research like from MIT and many other analysts. Looking back, we have done it the right way, and that's why our projects work. And I think it's a really good blueprint in terms of making the stuff tangible, making it practical, and making it live in production. So that is essentially from my side the talk. Thank you.
Thanks, Andre. We'll hand over to Vanessa now.
Thank you, Andre. Thanks. I appreciate the insight, and I know there are a couple of questions in the Q&A already. Guys, please pop some more questions in, and we'll get to them and answer them as soon as possible. For now, we just want to revert through to our guest, Francois. We have who is from SAI, and we have some really insightful questions to ask him, where he can share his insights as to what this has done for his organization. Francois, welcome, and thank you very much for taking the time to join us, and you'll share your insights today.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
And your pleasure. Right, so kicking it off. So the AI Farmer app is a fascinating innovation for farmers in Africa. What were the key problems that you were aiming to solve for the agricultural community with this app? And how have the farmers actually responded to it so far?
Yeah, I think that's the right approach, which you phrased in your question, was what was the problem we were trying to address. We've been having this problem of agricultural extension services and how to make agricultural extension services available to developing farmers and to family farmers in whole. Because you see, in South Africa, the overarching problem was we have about 530 registered agricultural extension practitioners, and we have about 284,000 farmers or family farmers that participate in the commercial market. So there were about 6 or 7 issues that just weren't addressed by normal means. The first one was institutional capacity. Usually these departments are underfunded and understaffed, and you've got inadequately trained agents that are struggling to make a real impact in the industry. If you look at that number that I just gave you, it's about 530 farmers to one extension officer. And if you are a new entrant into the agricultural industry, you need someone by your side to assist you with saying, look, this is where you are at the moment. I would suggest you use this type of fertilizer, or there's this new technology available, or we need to bring in some form of mechanization to help you overcome this hurdle. And throughout the world, every government in the world has within its Department of Agriculture, there is an agricultural extension department because they know it is that crucial. Around the world, about 570 million family farmers are supported by agricultural extension services. So institutional capacity was the first issue. The second one was limited access to knowledge. I know of no farmer that is able to farm during the day and do research at night, to go through the latest policy documents or to see what are the latest varieties and will that variety fit to his farming operations. We have language barriers. Here in South Africa, we have 11 official languages, and to match that agricultural extension officer with his specific type of expertise, with that farmer, with the problem that he faces, and then just trying to match the language barrier is already an issue. Resource constraints, again, not only do farmers not have the time to travel to large metros to visit these knowledge nodes where people are available to give them the advice. It's just, that from a spatial perspective, it's just not always possible. We have bad roads, electricity, all of that is an issue. Then the fifth one was about generic information. So we see that, the information that is disseminated at the moment are leaflets or pamphlets, and you cannot just tell a farmer, oh, you farm with maize in the Ermelo region, I would advise you do this. Every farming profile is different. Every soil type is different. Every climate is different from farm to farm. And for that, you need someone to assist the farmer and to address their specific problems on their specific piece of land. Then the supervision of agricultural extension agents. Again, as Andre said, this is not just about replacing people. This was to augment the current capability. And the best way to do that and to see whether it is actually working is by giving them an application where you can actually see if they are asking questions. You can see the sentiment of the types of questions, if they are getting irritated, if they are actually having a conversation with the AI. Because I think when it comes to adoption, we need a mind shift to take farmers and I think users in general from, this is not a Google search. It's not you search something and you get a list of results and then that's it. Or you just have to read and hope it applies to your problem. We need to shift the user journey to, this is a conversation. Yes, you get an answer, but let's talk about it further. What don't you understand that was in that answer? Is there a word that you're not sure about? Have a full, robust conversation with the AI and with the answer that you were given. And the same goes for supervision. We want to see that agricultural extension officers, when they are unsure, that they ask the app and that they click that copy button and that they send it via WhatsApp to the farmer. And then obviously, accessibility biases. If we talk about the democratization of information in South Africa, AI is the best example of that, because now for the first time, you can have access to the largest agricultural library in the world, and it's tailor-made to your problems. And a smallholder farmer or an entry farmer or a subsistence farmer can now have the same access to the type of richness of information as a big or large commercial farmer.
You're on mute, Vanessa.
Vanessa, we can't hear you.
Viewers, okay. After how many years of using Teams, I still managed to do that. Okay, thank you. I'm thinking there's many use cases that we can actually do this in other applications as well. But I think in the banking industry, loaning farmers money they would want to know that there's some technology supporting this, that their investment is safe and that they are using the right techniques and getting the right advice. So I think this is amazing. Yeah, so I have a couple more questions, but I just want to, for the interest of time, I just want to get this on the day-to-day operations, get some insights from you, Francois. Many organizations struggle to capture the insights of their most experienced people. Okay. How did SCI use the AI tool to make that expertise more accessible to the teams? And what difference has that made in the day-to-day operations for you guys?
Yeah, first of all, because we're a non-profit organization, we do not have the means to create experts in each of the fields when it comes to labor or when it comes to irrigation or veterinary sciences. So it was important for us because AI Farmer is trained on a database that was purchased that entails about 8,500 subcategories of South African agriculture. We knew we had a very good agricultural extension officer and we could rely on that information because it was very rich. But then we also trained it on South African law. We trained it on labor relations issues. And those agents were able to, or are still able to, provide very good assistance to any type of inquiry that our members have, but also to assist us as the representatives of the organization to speak to them during the day and say, look, but a member has come to me with this issue. I think this is the answer, but can you just check for me in the relevant legislation? Or a new policy document just came out, 400 pages. We have to deliver comment on it, or we have to give our commentary in the media. Just give us a summarized version, and how does this align with our policy positions? So that actually just, again, augments our capacity, whether it is myself or the junior staff, to assist them to having access to large amounts of information quickly.
Yeah, I mean, that's absolutely amazing. I think, we've also got a lot of organizations that have repositories of manuals, etc., that, people don't have access to, or they are filed in some SharePoint somewhere that is very difficult to find, the answers for you. So if you've got something like this, it's amazing. It really does. And transfer of knowledge is way easier. I'm just going to jump to, thank you very much, Francois. I'm just going to jump to, there's a few questions in the queue, in the thing. I see Phil. Thank you very much for everyone who've put their questions in so far. I'm going to just try and filter a few here just so we can get through different things and maybe answer different things to give more insights. So we have a question here from Phil, which I assume will go to Andre. Which language models power Iris? Okay, and how are they trained, customized, and updated for your solution?
Okay, so that's a really good question. So we haven't standardized on a single language model for the simple reason we've got a model team that maintains a catalog of models. And what we try and do is we do what we call evals. So we would try the same set of questions against like 5 or 6 different models, and we pick normally the model that is the highest quality. So literally when I set up an Iris instance, it defaults to a base model. It would be something like GPT-5. But then we do eval. So we configure Iris and say, I want to extract the following. In the back end, there's quite a lot of stuff, because if it's an image, it's a different process to a PDF, to a Word document, to Excel spreadsheet. So we got first extractors, and then what we do is it will default to, let's say, GPT-5 as a core model, but we will then also run evals against Gemini, against Grok, against even DeepSeek, depending on the customer, or smaller models like 4.1 or 4.1 nano, or one of the open source models. And then we typically look at the best quality and the cost for the use case. So in one Iris, you can connect more than one language model also, because it's a bit of a workflow. There's the extraction part, there's the image recognition part. We would run something like Tesseract to do the images. And then we have different questions being asked to different language models. So that's the principle. It's not one specific language model, and depending on the use case and industry, it will change. Also, we have a team whose job it is, not a big team, it's 2 guys whose job it is to test all the new models. So without us even deliberately looking at it, there's a team of people that would run additional evals every day on new models. And we might have an Iris instance that's been live for 3 weeks, where the team would then come back and say, you know what, we tested the latest release of Anthropic and it's actually better and cheaper and faster. Let's do that. In terms of how we train the models, many people believe that South Africans train models. It's actually not really true in most instances. It's too expensive to really train a model. So you got essentially three solutions. You use it as is, which we don't do. It's too dangerous. Number two would be you can fine-tune a model. We've seen very limited success in fine-tuning a model where you take a base model and you train it with additional info. The third approach that works the best and is the most accurate is to limit what you send to the model. You use the model in isolation. So you don't use a cloud service. We host the model in, let's say, Azure, and then we send limited context to the model, and that's how we get the answer to be more accurate. Then you don't have to train the model, you don't need to fine-tune the model, and you don't risk sharing your data with that model. That approach is the most cost-effective and the most accurate as it stands today. It might change a week from now, but that's the current approach.
Okay, good.
Yeah, I like the technical question, so thanks, Philip, for that.
Okay, but I think this one is also going to be very relevant for quite a few people on the call as well. Again, from Phil, thank you very much. How do you handle and secure customer data in the model, and how is any customer data used to train your models?
Yeah, so like I in a previous question answered, no one really trains a model. You can fine-tune it with customer data. It doesn't actually work that well anyway, so I wouldn't recommend doing that. How we protect is the model itself is safe. And it's a very technical concept. It's a neural network. It runs in isolation. You can run it if you've got a big enough laptop. You can run it on your laptop if it's huge, but some of them do run locally. If you use it like that, the model cannot do anything with your data. It doesn't send it up. The problem is often with the tool that sits in front of it. If you use ChatGPT, you're sending your data to ChatGPT that gives it to their model. That's highly risky. So for our enterprise customers, 9 out of 10 times we deploy the model inside our platform. So we don't send it to San Francisco or Arizona. We run the model locally in an environment. Even the premium models we do through partnerships with Microsoft and so on, we run a dedicated instance of the model of ChatGPT for our customer, meaning that none of the data gets sent beyond our platform to someone else. 9 out of 10 times when it's high-risk data, we run our entire platform in the customer's environment. So think of someone like PwC, our platform gets installed inside their hosting environment, which means their data is already there, it's protected by their stuff, and our platform runs in isolation inside there. That gives you a guarantee. It's called a zero trust approach. So we install it with a zero trust approach. None of the data ever leaves our platform unless we deliberately say we want to do that. And that protects you. And in that, Philip, is the answer to the biggest issue. The 97% of unpaid ChatGPT accounts, when people upload their payslip, their contracts, their customer data, what they don't realize is it's publicly disclosed, that becomes public domain. So you send all that confidential stuff to someone in the US that's going to use it to train the next model. And that's highly risky and dangerous. So we don't do that. That's our job, is to run it in your environment. And that's the right way, not just how we do it. That is the way it should be done, in our opinion.
Thanks, Andre. I hope that's answered for you, Phil. Any questions that you might have, we can also take it offline. Sorry, that's for everyone as well. If we don't get to your questions, we'll definitely address them. You can also send them through to info@connectbiz.co.za. So that is on the invite, the email address there as well. Just quickly, we have 4 minutes to go. We have two questions from Laura, which I'll combine into one. Andre, if you can please give us some examples of your Gen AI success projects that you've developed or deployed for HR. And then secondly, with a business that has a high priority on growing sales, sales out there, how could Gen AI assist with this complex challenge? If you don't really have an online platform or presence.
I'm going to answer both questions with one answer. So an example is a really big retailer in South Africa that deployed an HR assistant to all of their store employees because they inundated with calls like, am I allowed to be a social media influencer? What is the latest maternity leave policy? And they had a call center just for that because they got tens of thousands of employees in stores. But those employees, ironically, is similar to the rural areas. They don't have laptops and desktops. So what we did for them is we actually connected WhatsApp to a human resources assistant that's linked to the knowledge base of the company's HR staff. So all policies, all procedures, all contracts. So you as an employee use your WhatsApp, you say, hey, listen, am I allowed to do this or this? And can I get my latest payslip? There's an agent in the background that has got access to all of those contracts and it supplies it. That solves the issue of tech knowledge because everybody in South Africa does have WhatsApp, or the majority of people, and it's a really good HR use case. There's many others like recruitment, but HR is a good use case because there's lots of material. Okay. If you want, I can take 1 minute to do Tina's answer also. So Tina asked, what's the difference between Gen AI and LLMs, and do LLMs count as AI? An example of LLM in AI. Okay, that's a good question. So it's all part of AI. AI is where you have got something that you train a neural network with machine learning. What LLMs did was it wasn't like an experiment that worked. So LLM is a large language model. So it's an AI model that was trained on the internet. And the big thing was a thing called transformers. In GPT, the T stands for transformer. And they got an AI model to understand sentences. And that was the breakthrough that ChatGPT got, and that's what worked. And what they did is a language model like GPT-5 is trained on the entire human knowledge. So 3.5 trillion data points, 1 billion web pages. It's got all of that knowledge built into one model. So it is part of AI, but it's the fact that it generates an answer. That's where the term generative AI comes from, because normal AI like weather forecasting and that stuff has been around for 20, 30 years, and there's lots of that. What happened with language models, it made it accessible to normal humans like you and me. You don't need to be a data scientist to ask ChatGPT, hey, explain this brisket recipe, and it just does it. So the language models is the breakthrough, that transformer thing that made it accessible to everybody. And why? Because number one, it understands all languages, number one. And number two, it's got the knowledge of the whole internet behind it. And that's what made it such an impressive breakthrough and why it's so popular. It's all part of AI, but when it generates an answer, it's part of Gen AI. So it's a bit different to the old forecasting stuff. It's a super interesting field, Tina, and it is going to, and my last point for today is all of the analysts reckon that between 12 and 18 months from today, there will be a language model that is smarter than the smartest human on the planet. So I'll leave you with that. How's that going to affect all of us when you can speak to a ChatGPT that's a doctorate on everything and smarter than anybody you know? That's interesting and scary at the same time.
Andre, thank you very much. Al, I'm going to hand over to you. Lebo, I see your question in the chat. I will get back to you. I'll ask Andre to answer. Just in the interest of time, we want to close off, but we will definitely answer your question. Thanks for asking it. Over to you, Al, to close off.
Yeah, so thanks everybody for your time. We honestly appreciate it, and we hope that it's been insightful. If you'd like to have a follow-up session with us, please feel free just to drop us an email on info@connect-biz.co. We'll happily set up a session, and Andre and his team will join us, and we can unpack your specific types of queries and use cases. A very big thank you to Francois. We appreciate you coming and spending. We know your time is valuable, and sharing your experience and giving us a practical lens. Yeah, if we didn't get to answer other people's questions, please reach out. We are here. This is a fantastic opportunity and platform, and we would love to chat to you about it. Thank you, and have a good day, and have a productive afternoon. Thank you.